MC slaying.
Salama family, salama. How y'all doing today? Hope you're blessed and highly favored. Today we're gonna have an interesting build with our brother from TCA. TCA, welcome. Say hi to the family. You're gonna have to unmute yourself.
1 2 1 2.
Yeah, we hear you.
All right, salama, shalom, shout Uncle Yakoba, shout everybody who's listening.
Yeah, so we was talking behind the scenes. I was telling TCA how I enjoyed the build on his show, and I'm glad to have him on here. So, brother TCA, can you tell the audience who you are, and also, it could be a quick summary of when you awoken to being an Israelite.
Okie dokie. So I'm a husband, I'm a father of 3, and to be honest, I had no intention of making a YouTube channel, but I was very much obsessed with learning and sharing. So I'm one of them guys that when you're on the smartphone, always putting a status up on WhatsApp, just sharing some information that I've learned. And then some people were like, you know what, you should make a channel or write a book or something, because you're always posting some provoking stuff. And it wasn't even the Israelite history or parental obligation that got me to question reality, but there were some weird events during my secular music days. So I used to go by the name Skylar Grime in the English space, and I used to do a lot of secular music. And 10 years ago, I was involved with, I guess you call it, an entity or something like that, something bizarre, something paranormal. And it kind of propelled me to ask questions and seek answers from various people, like churches and books and stuff like that. And then after leaving the church environment, I found myself disillusioned to religion and dogma, and decided to look into things afresh, if that makes sense. So it's been a very interesting journey, man. Like, I guess the main catalyst for me is going back probably 10 years in the secular music industry. And there was, like I said, there was an incident in and around that time. And there was some funky stuff that happened after that made me question life and say, there's more to life than things you see. There's things you don't see. And that's what made me want to know more and read the Bible and see if there was any answers. So that's kind of a short summary, to say the least.
So I was wondering, and it's up to you if you want to talk about it. I'm just sort of curious about the supernatural thing that you said that was happening. Can you, if you're willing, give us a little short understanding of what that was?
Okay, so I was in the music game and I was doing a particular song, and a guy came into my studio session, and he looked, and when we do studio in the UK, people just come in and out of your sessions sometimes. So this guy came into my session, and I knew him from Handsworth in Birmingham in the UK, and he came in, he sat down, he was chilling. And these times I wasn't even trying to be on the Bible or try to be on anything, but my dad took me to church and taught me a few basic principles of Yahushua and stuff like that. So this guy came down in the studio session, and he was just talking about, because he was a Muslim, he was a well-known Muslim in the community, and then He said it became disillusioned with Islam. And I'll just do a quick condensed version, but he must have said to me that the Most High won't forgive him. The Most High will not forgive him. And I said, forgive you of what? And he said that he was a murderer. I said, murderer? Wow. I said, well, Moses was a murderer. The Most High forgave him. I said, Solomon was a gallus. The Most High forgave him. I said, Noah was a drunkard. The Most High forgave him. So I was trying to give this guy some hope, even though I weren't even on churchianity. I weren't really on it. I knew about it. I knew Yahushua was the truth just by the seeds that were sown. But I weren't really trying to be promoting scriptures and stuff like that. I weren't on it. This was 10 years ago. So then he felt a bit more confident that he could speak to me because I weren't being, I guess, a closed book in regards to what he said, even though the information did shock me. And then he was like, he said he's a murderer. So I said that. And then he said he's been reading the book of Spouse or the book of Wicca or the book of something crazy. And I was like, yo, you need to be careful what you read because one, you don't know what you're reading. And two, you don't know what seed you're planting. And he was like, Then he felt even more comfortable to say even more stuff to me now because I weren't. And this, I wouldn't even, anyway, it was interesting. He just started to open up even more and more. When, then he said, I feel like I can show you something, you know. And I was like, show me something. He said, yeah, man, I feel like I can show you something. I said, all right, then. So he came next to me. Now, in the studio session, I've just done the song. My producer's got their headphones on, so he's oblivious to the whole conversation. Totally oblivious to what's going on. So it's just me and him having this dialogue. And he says, I think I can share or show you something, you know. I said, all right, then. So he came close to me and he pulled out his phone. And in the phone, he's going to show me something on the phone and it's quite distorted. It's quite pixelated. So he's going to narrate, or like I said again, he's going to narrate what's on the phone. Now, prior to him sharing or about to share with me this information on the phone, his whole demeanor was very monotone. There was no fluctuation in the way he spoke. It was just very bland or bland. Now, when he's about to show me this thing on the phone, you know, this guy got very excited. It's like a total different change of character came onto this person, yeah. And I'm in the studio session and guys come close to me and he's pulled out his phone. And then in this, he's played a video. And then on the video, it's distorted, so he's narrating. And there was an obscure silhouette. No, that was the next video we played. So the first video we played, yeah, he shared a dog walking to a door. So there's a dog walking to a door. And he's grabbed the dog by the collar and he's changed, or, you know. So let's just say the dog's walking to the door, right? And he's filming it on his mobile phone. Then he's turned the dog's head to look at the mobile phone, right? So as I'm looking at the mobile phone, the dog's looking at me and I'm looking at the dog because he's turned the dog's head to look at the mobile phone. Now, as I'm looking at this dog looks a bit scared. He looks a bit timid. And from his jawline, there was missing flesh. Yeah, so from his, it's like, I guess, you know, sometimes in gangs they call it a smile stab wound or something, where they do a smile around the mouth. So I'm looking at this dog, man, and there's missing flesh either side of the mouthpiece, and I'm like, wow, what is this? And the guys became excited and animated, and he's like, yeah, so this was a dog that was what do you say we're doing? Torturing it or something like that. And I was like, okay, that's a bit creepy, you know. But I didn't say anything outwardly, or, you know. So he continued showing and sharing some more information and stuff. And I was like, okay, this is a bit weird. But I didn't really say it was weird, so we kept going. So then he went to video 2, and our video 2, there was an obscure silhouette, very distorted, very pixelated. So he's going to narrate again what's taking place because it's difficult to gauge when you're watching it. So he was like, look, man, the black bag is that dog now. I've placed it inside this black bag. So I was like, okay, so how did you get the dog in the, like, what the heck? Anyway, but I was so, I guess it's difficult to say the emotions that I felt. I was intrigued, but at the same time, I was like, this guy is nuts. But I didn't really vocalize it, so he kept going. And then he was like, so what happened was, from that video that you saw of the dog walking to the door to this video here, I got out a crowbar, I started whacking up the dog, fully dismembered the dog, and then threw it in a bag, which you can see in front of you. Now, I couldn't see the dog. All I could see was a bag. And he's just narrating, because back in the day, 10 years ago, the phones weren't the best when it comes to pixels, yeah? So he's just narrating the whole entire thing that went down. And I was just like, wow, what is this? So I could go on and on with the story because it gets interesting, but I'm gonna try and wrap it up for time's sake and stuff. But what happened at that point? Oh yeah, so I started to get into the psyche. I wanted to understand the pathways that led to this kind of behavior, right? So I said to him, I had to choose my words carefully and add a bit of like nervous laughs in there just to diffuse the situation slightly. So I was like, bro, what made you do this? Like, what got you to do these kind of things? And he says, you know what, bro? I'll be honest. You see, when I'm bored, I was like, go on. He says, when I'm bored, sometimes I just look around my local vicinity. If I see a stray animal, I'll take it home, play with it, and then after I finish playing with it, I'll just kill it. I was like, okay, that's interesting. So at nighttime, when you're bored, you might see something that's stray, take it in, even feed it and stuff, which is interesting, and then you want to kill it after. And I was like, that's interesting. And then, remember I told you I'm in a studio session, my brethren's mixing down the song, he's oblivious to the whole dialogue, he doesn't know what's going on, and my studio session's about to come to an end now. So then my producer guy, hood producer, nobody important. We weren't important. But he took off his headphones because he obviously was mixing on the songs, oblivious to what's going down. He took off the headphones and he was like, lads. Another point I need to add as well. When I used to go to the studio, late at night. I used to finish work, go studio. So it was always a graveyard shift. It was always nighttime, in the blackest of nighttime, yeah? So it's nighttime. The producer took off his headphones and says, lads, do you want a lift? And I was like, yeah, man. Rewind just a little bit, just a tad. I said to him, he said to me, when he's bored, he does them kind of things. I said, where do you live? He said, he lives in town. I said, me too. Oh, no. I'm getting this part of the story out of order slightly, just this little section. I think he went this way instead. So he said about what he does with the dogs and stuff. Then my producer took his headphones off and said, lads, studio session's finished, but I'll drop you guys home. So I said, that's fine. I live in town. And then the other guy who's in the studio, I never knew where he lived exactly. I've just seen him around and I knew that, he's a Negro guy, Muslim. He floats around a certain area in Birmingham and stuff like that. But I didn't know exactly where he lived. So when he asked the question, guys, do you want a lift? I was like, yeah, man, you can drop me to town. He goes, I live in town too. I was like, oh, man, I don't even know about this one, I said, I don't know about this one. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up the story, though. He dropped me, and he dropped the other brother too, because I was lazy them times. I just wanted the lift. I still took the lift. So I took the lift, and we both ended up going to town. And then we went our separate ways. I could never walk with him. Like we got dropped off at a different location. Fast forwarding slightly though. Remember I said I weren't into religion per se. I knew about Yahushua from my dad, but I weren't really like trying to go out there and or talk about or this, that, and the other. Yeah. So I went back to my apartment because I used to live by myself in this apartment in town. And I must have called one of my brethren and told him about this individual. And I said, be careful of this guy. I don't know what he's really about, but he seems very fascinating. Then I went to sleep. I had a weird dream that one of my family members was going to leave me. And that dream just so happened to be real and transpired. You know, like, so that was interesting. And then in this, as I had this dream, I woke up from the dream and I was hearing a voice and I was being suppressed. Now, they call it rapid eye movement. That's in the scientific realm. When you step out of the scientific realm, they call it old hag. The Islamic community call it jinn. The Christian community call it familiar spirit. So everyone's got a name or a label for this kind of incident. So anyway, I know I'm going to make the story short, but the story is so long. This was a mad one because there's more to it, but I'm going to leave it there. And that was kind of, I guess, the catalyst that made me say, you know what, there's more to life than things you see. There's things you don't see. I only heard the voice once, and it was a low, monotonous sound, and it was a taunting sound. I had a dream that a family member was going to leave me. That family member left me. And then when I woke up, I heard a taunting noise or a taunting sound saying, he's going to leave, going to leave, going to leave, going to leave, going to leave. Like that. And then I couldn't move. And it was just loads of weird stuff happened, man. And that's kind of what thrust me into looking into things and researching things and wanting to get some answers, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there because I could go on that story for a minute, but I just will leave it there. So back to you, Uncle Yacoba.
Yeah, thanks. Because I think a lot of us have supernatural events and of some sort, right? And I think it's interesting to hear them sometimes. But to move on,
snap. You know what I want to say on that one point, actually?
Yeah,
sorry, I want to finish off on this one point here. So this is the interesting point as well, because I was doing some studies with some brothers and I realized that Jesus' name wasn't Jesus, it was Yahushua, and stuff like that. So when I was in this stream, I need to finish off on this point because it's a big point still. So when I was in this being, I guess, suppressed in my sleep, but I wasn't sleeping, I was awake. So it's not rapid eye movement when you're awake. But I just couldn't speak. And when I was trying to speak, it's like I had a speech impediment. So I was trying to speak and it would be like, like how some people be talking in tongues, yeah? So I was like, and nothing weren't coming out and it weren't making sense. Now I remember my nan used to say to me, you must call upon Jesus. And I was like, all right. Nanny said call upon Jesus, but I know Jesus ain't really his name. So let me try this call on Yahushua. So I tried to call on Yahushua, and as I'm trying to say Yahushua, I was like, Yahushua. It just wasn't coming out, bro. Then I got to the fourth, I think it was the fourth or the third time. I said Yahushua, and whatever it was, that was just like literally, it was weird. Like I couldn't move and I couldn't talk, and I'm hearing a funky, mocking voice and all that kind of stuff. When I said Yahushua, whatever it was got off me. I turned the lights on. I grabbed my Bible. I took the dust off the Bible and I started just reading all night. So that was kind of, I wanted to end on that point because that's how it kind of ended on that day. But it happened over a series of months and then eventually it stopped happening. So another story for another day. But yeah, man.
Yeah, that's real interesting because, just a quick note for me, when I first got saved, born again, I was sleeping in my bed and I was awake. Somebody was mentioning in the chat sleep paralysis. That's the first time I experienced it. And I sensed this darkness that was on me and I was conscious, but I couldn't speak and I couldn't move. Right. And then I knew in my spirit that I was under attack. Right. But I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. And in my spirit, I called on Jesus, and because at that time I didn't know anything about Yeshua and all that. But as soon as I called on Jesus, I was delivered. And it was the first time I ever experienced something like that, right? But I hear a lot of people experienced that. And these spiritual attacks, they are vicious. They can be
Mm.
vicious. So let me ask you a question. So one of the things I like about your channel is that you do a lot of research, and you go places where a lot of people may not agree, or they may agree. Like, for instance, great job on the Dane Calloway, right? Great job. And how do you feel about that? Because I mean, a lot of people try to give Dana a pass, right? Like, maybe he's not an agent. Maybe he just believes this. I'm like, I've seen him, at least from what I've seen, some shady stuff, right? With the whole thing, we indigenous and all that.
Mm.
What's your thoughts about the Dane Calloway situation?
Dane Calloway situation. To be honest, I didn't realize when I was making the material how deep the division is in the American space with some people as it relates to our brothers and sisters in the continent. I didn't realize how much of a social engineering was going on to divide people on petty grounds or to include other people into a story that doesn't fit them. So I didn't realize until going down that rabbit hole of looking into it, because a lot of people have been coming out with a lot of memes, and I appreciate that we've been lied to of our history as a collective, and a lot of the information has been fragmented. So there's a lot of people that are probably talking about Dane Calloway, the people that are gravitating to him in terms of the misinformation. They're people that want truth, but because we've been lied to about a lot of things, people are trying to galvanize on that area and say they've lied about the entire world event. So because they've lied about every iota of history, that if you grab a meme and it looks like it could be a Negro person, then they've lied about this too. But when you get all of these memes and all these pseudo arguments and you go through it chronologically, it doesn't really hold that much weight. So I think these people, I would just call them I would call them, what's the word I'm after? Charlatans. Now they might have woke up, they might have genuinely started off saying, you know what, there's something in this. But it gets to a point, there's a fork in the road when you know that what you're actually teaching is just self-hate. Yeah, so it gets to a place where you know that Jackie Chan is not no disrespect to people who look like Jackie Chan, by the way, but you know that phenotype isn't the same as our people. But because you've gone so far in promoting a false narrative, you have to keep that narrative going. Now, I appreciate that some Indians in the American space, like the Gula Indians and the Seminole Indians, they're a mixture of Negro and Native American Indians, and some of them would be a part of the African heritage, but not every single Indian tribe over there is a part of their heritage. You know what I'm trying to say? So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
I guess that's what it is, man. There's probably people with divided loyalties that want it to be so, and then not only that, there's been a lot of miseducation in the American space as it relates to like the one drop rule and all that kind of stuff. So I guess it's just a lot of ignorance on steroids.
Yeah, I remember when I was young, and it's probably still the same today. Is nobody wanted to be Negro, right?
Mm,
Everybody wanted to be Seminole, Cherokee, all this type of stuff, because being a Negro, who we know to be Israel today, uh, was taboo, and there was discrimination.
mm,
Now, the other thing I noticed is a lot of people would say, well, there were black people here, right? And the black people were here, and these are our ancestors. And I'm like, just because they black don't mean they were us, right?
mm,
And I'm not saying there weren't some Negroes or Israelites or Africans, however you want to call them here, because we know Mansa Musa, traded with some of the Indians here. We know there's a lot of type of migration efforts and stuff like that. But a lot of people want to disregard the phenotype. But I always say, when you have a kid with a woman and that kid don't look like you,
mm.
you're gonna say phenotype don't matter. I'm just saying.
That's an interesting point there.
Yeah.
Because
So yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that's an interesting point in terms of the phenotype.
Yeah. So one of the things that I find interesting is it seems to cause division between us and the people on the African continent, right? Which is why you have some of the camps that say, Black crispy Africans and things like that. And I'm like, at least the way I see things, then you're not Israel because your claim to be in Israel comes from those people. What's your thoughts about that?
They say, but the scripture says that you shouldn't. Um, it's difficult to mock the original, if that makes sense. So we have to appreciate that you can't be a branch and mock the tree,
Yeah, yeah,
And where we got our history is going back to the continent. So to attack the continent is like attacking the tree. We know not everybody on the continent is Israelite. Yeah, but that being said, you can't like, for example, people are saying that African America is just two continents. I get it. But maybe that name made more sense than all these other names that people are coming with today, because you're from that landmass of Africa, but now you live in the continent of what's called America. So that name even makes more sense. But because there's a lot of people saying that it was Jesse Jackson that came up with the term, but there's books and literature that predate Jesse Jackson that have African America on there. So it's nothing to do with Jesse Jackson. So that's another strawman argument that says, hey, we only called ourselves African American because of Jesse Jackson, and we know Jesse Jackson was Boule. So that's, like I said, that's a strawman argument that's used to throw away a connection with the continent. And another point as well, brother, I realized that, Huey Newton.
yeah.
Obviously, I love Huey
Yeah.
Newton. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just realized the other day.
Icon.
I realized the other day, Uncle, that Huey Newton was a part of the Boule thing,
Oh, was he?
Yeah, bro. Deep.
I didn't know that.
I was like deep up to his neck in the Boule thing, man.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that till probably 2 weeks ago. Part of the Phi Beta Sigma.
Oh, he was Phi Beta Sigma?
Yeah.
So let me ask you: do you think that this opposition that the Black Panthers had and everyone was manufactured, or what?
Listen, listen. I believe certain part. Fred Hampton got took out. Yeah, but not all of them got took out. And I think that every year they've just been developing this psychoanalysis of our people and putting people in position of leverage to, I guess, galvanize our people to follow a certain narrative, So, like, for example, everybody knows now that the IUIC people, the leaders and the elders of that are police officers, or not just police officers, but they haven't disclosed. Like, if you're a police officer, disclose that you're a police officer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't hide behind. Don't wait to come out and get exposed to being a police officer. Say you're a police officer. But in terms of like these movements, though, like civil rights, Martin Luther King, Bayard Rustin, homosexual, going out with a Ashkenazi, a lot of NAACP, founded by Ashkenazi. Then when you look at Huey Newton's parents, they were part of the NAACP. So you just see it's a very small circle of influence that seem to be running the show, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense because, I've been watching a lot of Israelites and they're trying to connect us and put us under Ashkenazim, right? And other Judaism, and trying to even say that we're the same people, right? And even when you look at, like the law that was just passed recently by Biden administration about the LGBTQ, being able to get married in interracial marriages. Those are the two things that they keep trying to push on the Black community. The other is, for the awakened Israelites to be a part of Judaism, right? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, it seems like we're really being manipulated on the side.
In terms of the assimilation into Judaism, I think the lies are so deep, that when you step out of one lie and you're thinking, yeah, man, I've got this boxed off, there's no other lies now. you realize there's like two more lies that you've been probably advocating, or that you still need to step out of yourself. So like even like the language, then like I'm not so dogmatic per se with people, because I know one day you'll learn something today that you might find out was wrong, and then you have to unlearn and relearn and go through that transition and that change here. But
Yeah.
in terms of the Ashkenazi thing, the certain words that we use today that just sounds so Russian.
Yeah.
I'll be like, even I use them like certain words we use, like possibly shalom, possibly rak.
Mishpoha.
What's that one?
Mishpoha.
Yeah. Rakatadesh and all them things. But when you're coming out, man, there's so much things you have to basically be a child
Yeah.
and come from a position that you don't know anything, and then you can know something. And in my experience, the more you learn or the more you study, the more you realize you don't know anything. But the less you study, you think you know a lot.
That's true. That's
You know what
true.
I'm saying?
Yeah, I've learned a lot of stuff and things like you say. I thought I was right about, but then I find out no, that's partially right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
So one of the other things I like is, you know, and let me ask you this, because I know you must get some heat because I would consider you one of the few who I call a truth channel, right? You'll go where the truth is, no matter what anybody say. How does it feel? Let me rephrase that question. Um, how many times have you been attacked based upon your position on certain topics?
Um, frequently, frequently, especially when because maybe just because of where I am, it's easier for me to tackle certain topics without too much of a backlash, you know? So, for example, when I started talking about the charts and how it's just a fallacy, now that tickled my ears. When you read the charts, you see Jamaica as Benjamin, and you're like, yeah, man, validation, we're on something, we're about something, we're being represented. But then when you check it, most of that rhetoric is to say that Levi, or they'll say Levi, Benjamin, and Judah, they're Negro, and then the rest are just fair game. Like it's just total Eurocentric to an extent. So I guess probably the charts was an interesting one, because a lot of people have rightfully so invested a lot of time and energy into the narrative, into the publications, into the doctrines. Relationships have been made and formed and solidified, and children have been made through this union of a false narrative. So I guess when you touch on that one, that one's been that was probably the most problematic one. And then I had that build with Sakari and was talking about the charts and stuff like that. So maybe the charts was an interesting one, and maybe the other one would be the Ron Dalton, when we had our disagreement, because I didn't really like how he positioned himself as an elder. When I say an elder, I don't mean like I just call anyone who's older than me out of respect an elder or an uncle. And I just felt the way he came across very arrogant and stuff like that. But that being said, we all have ego,
Yeah.
and we all have to die to our ego daily. Even having channels and stuff, it can boost your ego, you know. So I'm conscious of that, and maybe in the future I could speak to that uncle and get that straightened out. But in terms of the charts and stuff, I would say that was probably a interesting backlash. And also the Indian thing with Dane Calloway. Wow, I've never had so many expletives from when I started to touch on the Indian rhetoric that gets circulated.
Yeah. Some people are diehard on that one, and no matter how much evidence you present, they're gonna stick to it, right?
Absolutely. I find a lot of people, when it comes to the history, they often reference their grandma.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the culture of the Indians in general, it was a matrilineal and matriarchy system, which again goes at variance to the Israelite culture, so it's just very interesting.
Yeah, the funny thing is my dad used to tell us we had Seminole blood in us, right?
Mm.
And when we took our DNA test, it's pretty much non-existent, right? But then when you look at the history of our people in slavery on this continent, a lot of the Indians were allies in fighting the white man. So it's like I could see where they could get confused that, we all intermingle. Some did. Now, I
Yeah,
understand
of
that.
course.
But a lot of us were still just African slaves living and fighting along with the Cherokees and all of these different tribes, and some of them had us enslaved as well. And that's why I say our history, our story is complex. And to
Mm,
say we're Indian alone and stuff like that, I mean that negates the history that we all know just from our own word of mouth, right? Because
mm,
there's things that's handed down from father to son. Now we don't get an entire picture of it, but even when you start looking at the history of the Gentiles, all of their information isn't wrong because, like today, most of the media is controlled, right? But back
mm.
then, it wasn't, right? You had a lot of competition, you had a lot of opposing groups, and you had historical books, especially the pre-1850s, that were more accurate and truthful than the ones after.
Mm.
So the other thing I was interested in, I saw your video about the Giants, and that's something I look at as well. And in the Americas, you had what they call the Serpent Mounds, and
Mm.
then you had this whole thing with Peru and Mexico and the Giants. What's your thoughts in terms of that? Do you think they still exist, and if they exist, where are they?
Well, you have to look at two things with those questions. So when you look at it climatically, you had a different hydrosphere, a different atmosphere, different food, and those food were highly oxygenated, so that will cause people to grow and be bigger in scale. So when you read Enoch, though, in Enoch it says that the Most High commanded the angels to cut down the trees. So that's an interesting thing. Before the flood, they was told to cut down some trees. When you start connecting those things and looking at that, you're like, wow, what was the importance of the tree in regarding the atmosphere of that time? And obviously, bigger fruit, bigger people. And another interesting point about the Giants as another secondary source, which I don't, anything that's a source historically is a source. I don't have to read the whole thing and say, yeah, man. So in the Quran, again, I don't advocate the Quran. It talks about Adam being so tall and Eve being so tall. Like literally, you'd probably say a giant's size. That's interesting. Then when you go to Peru, when the Jesuits came to Peru, um, when the Jesuits came to Peru, they said they saw all these big skeletons. In fact, one of the Spanish soldiers, he thrust his sword through the eye socket of a skull. So imagine a sword being thrust through an eye socket. And he said that the sword wasn't able to touch the back of the skull. That's showing you how big their head was when they arrived in Peru. But not just in Peru. When you go to some of the old maps of Africa, in and around South Africa, and bordering near Congo, South Africa, you see an image of a giant on those maps too. And then when you go to Scotland, it's got a history of giants. So it's quite evident that on the whole earth, there's been a history of giants. It's not just America, it's not just Europe, it's not just Africa, but it's like they were here, there, and everywhere. Are they still here today? Possibly, but yeah, I would say so, but you have to define what a giant is and what a giant isn't. So there's titans, that's another caliber, that's like pre-flood, and then there's giants, which is post-flood. Now, even in that story, some people are like, but hold up, weren't the giants wiped out by the flood and this, that, the other? There's some interesting scenarios because we know OG, he was the remnant and he survived. So, well, didn't survive, but he's there. So he must have survived somehow, interestingly. So you have OG, you have Goliath, and Goliath was about 9 feet tall or 9 foot something, or just under 10 feet. Now, when you go to Europe and you go to England, you have, what's his name? Not Harry. William is married to Middleton or KT Middleton or Kate Middleton, whatever her name is. Now, the Middleton family in Europe, there's a statue of their ancestor, and their ancestor is about 9 feet tall. 9.5 feet tall, or something around those calculations. 9 feet tall. So it's interesting that there seems to be some tall people, and a lot of the tall people that you find isn't from places like Sudan, which people often gravitate to and say, look, man, it's the African place in Sudan. A lot of the tall people you find, male and female, generally have been European. So it's interesting.
Have you ever read the book called The Smoky God?
The Smoky God.
Yeah.
Can't say I have.
So in that book, it was in the late 1800s. This guy, he was from, I think it was Norway, and
Okay.
his family used to worship Thor. Yeah, I think it was Thor. And so, according to him, him and his son were on a fishing vessel because they wanted to go. I forgot where they were tracking to, but they were trying to go to this location someplace. I think they were trying to find the gods or something like that. I can't remember, but they ended up in this place where what to make a long story short, you know, they had a lot of issues on the seas. They almost died because they ran out of water, and but then they ended up in this place where the water became fresh, and they ran into this huge ship. Now this what makes me think is real, right? They ran into this huge ship, and he said this ship was so big that you know they picked up their boat and put it on that ship. Now, what they said was that the people were on that ship dancing and singing and partying, right? He said it was a festive ship, right? Like we call it a cruise ship today. And how big our cruise ships are today, he was saying this, right? And he said that there were giants on that ship, right? And so also he stated that they had a fake sun, which is why they call it the smoky God. Now I find it interesting that today we're building artificial suns. We already have cruise ships, you know, and also he talks about how they had this tram that goes around the mountain, and it it floated sort of on this track, right? And that it would go around the mountain. And then he talks about the homes. He said, and it reminds me of today. He said the homes were all close together. They all were similar, but a little different, right? That you can say that about our houses today, right? They all similar, but a little different. And you know, if when you get a chance, check it out. It's real interesting. So when I look at these stories of this hidden continent, right, and my brother and I would talk about this all the time. We think, you know, like in the Antarctica, you know, certain places you can't go in the Antarctic, that there's a hidden continent that's not on the maps, that that's where the giants are probably at. What do you think of that concept?
To be honest, I would tend to agree. You know, in fact, if you look at the film, the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant, there's a scene in that film here when he's saying to the guy, "Where do you guys come from?" And they take out the map, and it's a flat Earth map, I think, which is interesting. I think it's a flat Earth map, or it's just a map anyway. But they take out this map and they say to the giant, "Where do you come from?" And you know, they're giving him selections to choose from on their map. You know, they're saying, look, you must come from these regions because this is our cartography, this is our map. And he points off the map. Yeah, he points way off the map and says, we're not even on the map. So your map's incorrect. And that would probably answer that question. And not only that, but I know when we talk about the flood, we often, there's other flood stories that have their own different spin on that flood. For example, the legends of Gilgamesh. And in the story of Gilgamesh, it talks about how this guy survives the flood. And not only does he survive the flood, but he goes to the extremities of the world and he actually leaves the Truman Show. He follows the sunrise to the east, is it? Anyway, he follows a certain route and he's able to get to the extremities of the world and have a dialogue with people behind the stage which is very interesting. And when you go to Genesis 6 verse 4, it says there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. So he's talking about 3 times saying there's giants in the earth now, in those days, and also after that. So prior and past tense and future. So there's so much evidences that these things exist, and maybe they are on the map, but they haven't shown us where for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I believe that's who's really controlling the world and what is advanced technology is coming from, because the technology is exponentially growing. And prophetically wise, what are your thoughts on what we're seeing today in terms of what's happening in the world? Do you think all of this stuff that we're seeing is prophecy coming to pass?
Absolutely would be prophecy coming to pass. There's so much different things to look into and consider. I mean, I'm currently just looking at, I'm late to the party on this one, but I'm starting to arrive. And it's the whole Africa migration per se, because the Red Sea narrative of going to the Sinai Peninsula isn't really making that much sense to me currently. You know, in terms of that little land strip being so-called Israel, it
Yeah.
doesn't really make a lot of sense. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. You get me? So I'm trying to look into that one afresh, and even places like when we read the scriptures, and coming from an Adventist perspective, in terms of how we've been taught to do things, we say evening to evening is the observance of the Sabbath, and I can teach that like the back of my hand, because that's what we were taught in the Adventist setup here. But then when you realize a day starts at daytime, like a day consists of 24 hours, and the way we observe the day is that we would divide the day into two. So you'd have, it's still one day, but it's divided into two. So you have daytime, and then you have nighttime, and there's 12 hours in a day, and there's 12 hours at nighttime, and collectively that gives you 24. Now, when you go to Ethiopia, they have a 12-hour day cycle that just don't break, like just 12 hours in the day. Yeah. And they have a 12-hour nighttime, and it just lines up with the scriptures perfectly. But going back to the prophecy question, definitely a lot of things are starting to fast forward, and I guess that's why there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation to keep people missing or not being prepared, overcoming sin.
Yeah, I've done several studies on Africa, sub-Saharan Africa being the true what we call Israel, and I believe Jerusalem is over there in what we call Ethiopia.
Okay.
And I get a lot of heat from it, but I mean, I try to make the scriptures line up with the historical records. Like, for instance, there's this letter called the letter of Aristeas, and when you compare the description of Jerusalem in the letter of Aristeas, it definitely don't fit the Middle East. And the Most High said He was going to give us the best of the land, with the rivers and the gold and the silver and the food. And I'm like, nothing else fit but the continent, right? So, and He said they divided my land, right? But I think it's hard for us to get rid of what we been programmed to, as Jerusalem or Israel. But our people don't realize they never want us to go home. They never want us to go back because they want our land. And so now that we have awakened, the whole thing is to divide us and make us think we're we're American Indians or Native American Indians. So we can't go back and get our inheritance. That's the whole thing. Our people don't realize that.
I
But
agree with that.
but the whole thing is, to me, is that this awakening has shaken the world. So let me ask you this. So Kyrie and Kanye, what's your thoughts on that? Because I personally, I don't trust Kanye. Kyrie, I think he's just looking. But regardless of what you say about it, they didn't shook up the world. The world knows who we are. What's your thoughts on that whole thing?
my thoughts on that whole thing. I feel like Kanye West he's been hard pressed, whether that be self-inflicted or by design, but he's been hard pressed, i.e., not being able to see his children, breaking up with the woman that he loves, the Canaanite lady, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they say love makes people do crazy things, right, and stuff like that. I mean, even Samson was willing to lose his lose his hair and lose his eyes and all that kind of stuff. So in the case of that brother there, and the things that he's saying, which I won't really repeat because I don't want to compromise your channel, but he's just saying some things that are 100% truthful, and maybe he has to use the veneer of being insane to get away with it, because if people didn't have him as a sane person, then they would say that there's straight hatred. But his defense is that he can say things and then probably fall back on saying bipolar, or fall back and saying I've got mental health. So that's probably a way that he can navigate around it. The Kyrie Irving thing, to be honest, it could be legitimate, but there's been many a times in the American space when somebody says a few sound bites, it goes viral, and then there's more legislation introduced to stop freedom of speech. So it's like on a chessboard, sacrificing a pawn to bring in stronger regulations and stuff like that. So with the whole Kyrie Irving thing, I just see things sometimes as gimmicks. Sometimes I just see there's a lot of gimmicks sometimes, especially when you find out that there's a whole Black Jewish entertainment alliance, and a lot of the people that spoke out against or said they were Israelites in the past are signed up to this BGEA alliance. So I don't know, man. I don't really just flock to something like that, if that makes sense. I know a lot of people do in terms of notoriety, but I don't really think it's we'll have to watch it and see how it goes. We'll have to, I guess, see the fruit of what happens.
Yeah, well, when Kanye came out, I did a video called "Painting the Target" because I felt just like you are that, it's a psychological operation where they will paint us based upon what Kanye has said and make us anti-Semitic so they can pass laws against anti-Semitism, which is directly at us. And as far as Kyrie, I don't necessarily trust him, but because he got a lot of interfaithism type religious stuff all on him, tattoos and the whole hella thing. That's sort of suspect as well. And I think we have to be cautious. But one thing I couldn't deny is that they didn't shook up the world. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But I think the change in terms of recognizing who we are, I don't think they can deny it anymore, because our detractors, right? I don't know if you followed the whole beef with us and urban apologists, but the whole dynamic has changed from us not being the people and then to maybe some of us the people. Did you ever watch that whole thing?
I haven't came across it, but I know that brother Dante Fortson, he was having a few issues with I think it was Vocab Malone and stuff like that. And I did a video on Vocab Malone showing his links to his German side and his Italian side, and basically he's an Ashkenazi. And it's just like, okay, no more needs to really be said at that point.
See, that's the thing. I mean, I did the same thing. Come to find out, he's related to the Ashkenaz, John Mark Reiser, right? And then I don't believe Abu is his real name. He's another one. I believe he's an Ashkenaz as well. And my whole thing is this, right? Don't try to make it like we the same, right? That there's no difference. I'm not stupid. There's obviously a difference. You don't look like me. You don't look like my cousins. You don't look like my mom and my daddy. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, let's be honest, right? Because they all want to say we the same. And I'm like, well, phenotype don't matter. Okay, well, if you believe that, then, if your wife go have kids by a black man, then phenotype don't matter. I mean, that's how I feel about it,
True, man.
So in the end, when it comes to this awakening, I think it has shaken the world, and I think now they have to deal with us, right, in terms of our claim, because I don't know, how and this is one of the questions, and I'm glad we're on this topic. I wanted to ask you, how is the awakening in the UK? Scotland as well. How big is the awakening amongst the Negroes, aka Israelites, in the UK?
I say it's I'd say people know, like there's an awareness in terms of what people are doing with what they know is interesting, because I'd say still people know, but they're still in churchianity because of convenience and uh being comfortable and stuff like that. But then there are people that do know, and I say, yeah, it's an interesting one, man. I say definitely people know, but still clinging to a lot of churchianity in terms of not really trying to rock the boat in terms of the historicism, and just going under the label of we're all Gentiles, or just trying to stay as PC as possible in some places.
So even after the coming out of Kanye and Kyrie, they're not asking questions.
Now I think over here as well, there's a high Muslim concentration, and Christian. It's like Christian and Muslim. So you have the Muslims who will say, "Yeah, we know, but we're gonna run with a Muslim spin," and then you have the guys who know, and they'll run with a Christian kind of spin, if that makes sense. So yeah, but not everybody's like that. There is obviously people that know full well, and but it's an interesting one, man. It's a very interesting environment, to say the least.
Now you've been to the continent of Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Ghana or where did you go?
I've been to. I'm gonna call Egypt a part of Africa, yeah, because I believe it is. So I've been to Egypt and I've been to Gambia.
Oh, Gambia, yeah. So were you thinking of relocating there, or just wanted to visit, or you had family there, or what?
I just wanted to see and have that empirical experience and put a stamp in the passport.
Oh, okay.
Nah. Not only that, I just wanted to see what it's like, man, and go back to basics and see, our people, because I believe that the continent is where our people is. So that was what do you call it, like a pilgrimage, for one of a better
Yeah.
word, just to see our people and touch base.
So how did you feel once you got on the continent? Because some people say it's a spiritual experience when they set foot on the continent. What was your experience?
It's definitely humbling, and it's like it's less bureaucratic, you know. Literally, it's it's you definitely have people, because it's just laid back, but it's laid back in a way where it's just like chilled, like there's no stress in that, in that respect, in terms of like no one's panicking to get to a destination on time, walking very fast that they can slip up. Everything's just calm, chilled. It's like a slower pace, but that's not to say people aren't diligent and doing what they're doing, but um, it just seems less tense, you know. But on the flip side, there is a lot of poverty by design, a lot of sabotage of infrastructure by design. There is a lot of Eurocentric worship by design.
Oh
And when I
yeah,
say Eurocentric worship, I don't even just mean in a churchianity perspective. I mean
yeah.
like white imams, like just pure psychological Arabization and Eurocentricism on steroids.
So how do you think we can break this conditioning that we're many of us are under from the Eurocentric church, and from any religious institution? Because I mean, we're slowly waking up, but we can see that there's a lot of things we got to shake off us. How do you think we go about that?
Um, this process of putting people to sleep has been X amount of years in the making. Some people think it's 400, some people think it's 5, some people think it's 2, some people think it's 100. Whatever the time frame people want to subscribe to that. It's been a long time You know, a lot of seeds have been sown, and when you throw one seed, you get fruit, and then in that fruit, you have more seeds. So this is a harvest of ignorance that's been plowed and sowed for X amount of years. So it's going to take time, it's going to take patience, and it's going to also take a lot of self-sacrifice. Don't take things too personally when people take personal shots, because that was probably you 2 years ago, you know. And I think that's kind of one of the hardest things when you know something, to A, pretend like you don't know, or B, not be passionate about sharing what you know. And in that process of sharing what you know, sometimes you can get backlash, but don't take it personal. I don't think it's going to be an overnight silver bullet to wake people up, but ultimately I think the Most High is going to wake up people when he sees fit, and by whatever medium he sees. So whether it's a Kyrie or a Kanye West, maybe they probably aren't the best vessel or are the best vessel, but the Most High is going to wake up people how he sees fit.
Yeah, I have to learn how to not take things personal and realize, uh, people gonna be people and they're gonna say and do things. You can't always fight everything. you know, that's one of the things I gotta get a handle of. All right, so brother TC, I want to thank you for coming on and with this build, and also, can you tell the family how to get to your channel and contact you?
Yes, Uncle Yakoba. So if you just go to YouTube channel Thoughts Camera Action, or go to www.thoughtscameraaction.com, sign up to the mailing list, and anything that you don't see on YouTube will possibly be on the internet website or on the Patreon, thoughtscameraaction.com. And also my wife's got a channel that's kind of, it's hybrid in terms of it's dedicated to the children, but it's also dedicated to family. Yeah, and it's also dedicated to okay, it's multifaceted. It's not just one. But we started off trying to cater it for the children, but then it just was looking at it from a family perspective, history perspective. But she's kind of running with that one, and that's called Set Apart Living. So there's animation on history and Sabbath lessons, and I think my wife's doing a quiz. Yeah, Uncle Yakobe should jump on the quiz. You know, she's doing a quiz, man.
What kind of quiz?
It's a quiz where you just need to what's it called now? A Bible quiz, like scripture quiz and history quiz or whatever it is. But all you need to do is go to the website. All the information will be told on the live stream. Yeah, go to the website. No one has to pay for anything, subscribe to anything, none of that stuff. But you go onto the website, you ask for a PIN number, and you can do the quiz on your phone or on your laptop. So you can just do it wherever you are.
Oh, okay. And this is the Thoughts Camera Action website?
Oh no, this is YouTube, so it'll be the Set Apart Living channel.
Oh,
My
okay.
wife's gonna do a quiz in the next 2-3 hours or so, and anybody, no matter where you are, can join. It's called Kahoot. Yeah, that's it, Kahoot.
Oh, okay, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's very it's interesting, like just to see the brethren on there. And even though we know it's not a competition, we know how people love contests, isn't it? So it's just a nice way to sharpen the sword and to have a bit of a a fellowship per se.
And do you have a email that people can contact you with?
Yeah, Thoughts Camera Action gmail.co.uk. I got 3 or 4, but yeah, that's probably the best one.
Okay. And so I want to thank you for coming on, brother TCA. And can you tell a family for us provoking thoughts? I like that. I like the way you provoking thought.
Wow. Shout out, at first, before I end on that, man, I just want to say thank you, Uncle Yakuba. Thank you for the twin as well, Teu. Have I said that correctly? Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yep. So, man, you know what it is? I want to share a bit of appreciation for you guys, because it's difficult when you mature to let go of certain things. So, like, my father's like within that age catchment year, and he ain't letting go of churchianity for now. You get me? So when I see people like yourself, there's another person called Uncle Sharif and that, and when I see people of that caliber, that age, is like, it's hopeful for us, man. It's like, yeah, man, we got some elders that will support us, or you know, we can confine ourselves to and stuff like that. So yeah, man, big up. What was the question that you asked me to end? Oh yeah, I hope you found this build interesting. And as always, people, provoking thought.
All right, family. Love this build. We got to do it again, brother TCA.
Yeah, man, of course.
Peace and blessings, Israel. Your captivity is ending.